Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
You're listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Obviously, we have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to talk about news, notes around the league, all-star voting, trade rumors, trades that have happened. Also going to talk about some college basketball. It's been a very, very busy week in college basketball early in the week. We're also going to talk about just my opinions on some championship teams and other things like that. So starting off with some first news. Kyrie Irving said something very interesting after the Brooklyn Nets lost the 76ers on Wednesday. He was talking to the media and he was like, well, we need another piece. We don't have enough. We need one or two more pieces of what we have currently if we're going to be able to make a championship run. This obviously made a lot of people kind of surprised. Some people didn't really like this statement by Kyrie. Obviously, Kyrie's leadership skills have sometimes been questioned from time to time. Some people feel like Kyrie... the thing about Kyrie, I think, is that Kyrie can sometimes be harsh. It comes off harsh, but it's real. Because, sometimes you know the truth about your team, but you don't want to put them out there or embarrass them, or, you don't want to make them feel like you're throwing them out into the public. Kyrie seems like he's not scared to do that. He's not scared to say they need to do better at this. They need to be better with that. They need to be better with this. If we don't have this, we're not going to do anything. He did it in Boston, which obviously, we obviously talk about how his leadership was there. And obviously, this is one of her statements that were really big that he's made with Brooklyn. And I think one reason why this is interesting, because he's making this type of statement without Kevin Durant being there. He's making this kind of statement without their best player being there. And it's kind of one of those statements, can he really make that statement right now? Because you have to look at this Brooklyn team. Depending on where they finish in the seeding, right now they're currently the 8th seed, and they're still technically under 500. You don't know where they're actually going to end up at the end of everything. Obviously Kyrie's averaging 27 a game. Spencer Dinwiddie's a good piece. Joe Harris is a marksman. They have Jared Allen good in the post. Chris LeVert just got back. He's trying to get his legs back under him, and they have some guys, but they're still trying to put it all together. So him making a statement this early, especially with him coming back from injury, not being a part of this season up to this point as much, I think he's missed 25 games, 26 games, I believe, because they're 13 in that stretch. It's just interesting how he make a statement like this, and they're not even having their full team. Now, maybe he feels like, even with KD, this isn't going to be enough, but, for this year, it could be enough. We don't know that. KD's not playing. But I think it's interesting that a statement like this was made by him. It's funny because it's like Kyrie talks almost like he's expecting to make a championship run this year. Which, obviously, you say you're going to play if you make the playoffs to win a championship, but, And, of course, this team isn't going to. There's nothing you can do with this team to get them to championship level unless you get another superstar this year, which will be highly unlikely. That other superstar will be Kevin Durant, which will be next year. So really, this year was looked at for the Brooklyn Nets as a year of just make the playoffs. See how far you go to the playoffs without Kevin Durant. See how close these games are. Even when you lose the series, see how close the series is. And, it's just one of those things where you gotta really see, okay, so if KD was here, how would this series have changed? How would this season have changed? Obviously, if KD was here this year, we can maybe safely assume that with KD, who is considered one of the top 3 best players on the planet, the Brooklyn Nets will be not an 8th seed, but probably in the top 4, up in there fighting with the rest of the Eastern Conference teams for the top spot. So again, Kyrie Irving making such a statement like this early is kind of surprising to a lot of people. And a lot of people are not always the biggest fans of things like this because they're not sure how to feel about someone like Kyrie making this kind of statement. Because it's like, why would Kyrie come out and, in a way, tell you that he doesn't think his team is good enough? Like, you never want to go out and tell them. Now, if you want to say it in private, okay, and y'all can talk it out. But telling the media, yeah, this team isn't good enough. We need more pieces. Especially with a team that you knew your best player isn't even playing until next year. It's just like, can you really make a statement like that, Kyrie? Like I said, Kyrie's been under a lot of scrutiny because of his leadership. Obviously, if you've been paying attention, Boston has done superb without him being a top seed in the East. And people feel like the Boston Celtics are better without Kyrie because Kyrie held guys back. And some people were trying to, debate it, try to fight it, try to be like, oh no, they're wrong. Kyrie has a good point. Personally, for me, I just feel like he could have worded this differently. To me, I feel like he could have been like, well, there's some things that we need to really get us over the hump. But don't say we need a player. Or don't say the team is, just say there's just something missing. You got to do it like that, almost like there's just something missing here, and we're going to try to figure it out. Don't say we need extra players. Don't say that. If you want to sit here and say everybody needs to play better for them to be successful, say that. But don't say we don't have the people. It's obvious we don't have the people. Because he was very firm. He was like, look, I'll be transparent and I'm going to keep saying it. So he basically is going to say, hey, Brooklyn front office, if you don't get another superstar or another good piece, we're not going to be able to compete. And again, it's just, how can you make that type of determination if your best player isn't even playing for you? And it's not like he's just like a Victor Oladipo in Indiana best player. It's a superstar championship level player. And so, maybe we'll have to see what happens. We don't know if Brooklyn's going to make any moves at the deadline. So we're going to have to see if maybe Kyrie gets his wish. We also got to see how this team, develops, the chemistry, everything like that when Kyrie gets together. We're going to have to see what happens. So we're going to have to stay tuned for whatever Kyrie Irving has to say next. And so another news, we have another player calling out, not just, you could say his team, but he's really calling out a lot of the younger players in the league. JJ Redick. He called out players around the league saying players are more important or more value how they dress before a game more than they value wins and losses. Now, we can admit that the pregame outfit has been a very big spectacle for NBA now, where now everybody brings in the wildest fits or different fashion and stuff before games, obviously, especially on primetime games, that's what you see. And obviously that's became like a very big part of the NBA. So, JJ is just saying, hey, we y'all worried about how y'all are dressing when you need to be worried about how you going to win this game, how you going to win the next game, how you going to win the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth game. Because, so I'm pretty sure some veterans maybe feel like some of the younger players are complacent or they're too just, oh, we don't need this, we don't need that, we're fine, we have everything we need, we don't really need anything else. And so, you can sit here and say JJ has a point that some players just don't care enough. And, again, this is more of a widespread statement. This isn't focused on the Pelicans. This is more just around the league with younger players. But you would think at a point that some of what you have heard from him is probably having to do with maybe some of the players on his own team. Obviously, he's a veteran. He's been in this game long enough. He knows what's important. He knows what you got to do, your mindset that you have to have if you want to compete in this league. And he's just saying that he feels like the younger players in this league don't have that mindset and that focus. Because I guess sometimes think about if a player loses and then after the game he still has this wild fit. It's just like you clearly came into this win or loss thinking, I'm trying to wear this. I'm trying to show out. I'm trying to make a statement. I'm trying to do that. Instead of just maybe just normal attire or just a normal fit after the game. But it's interesting hearing JJ come out and say that because, obviously JJ's been around for a while. He's seen it. He's been around. So we're gonna have to see what happens. Hopefully there ain't gonna be too many issues out of this. I just think this is more of just a, hey, y'all need to start focusing on winning games and not dressing up. But next segment, we're going to talk about a trade that happened at Zion Williamson's NBA debate announced coming up right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about Kyrie Irving calling out the Nets, saying they need more pieces and basically burying the entire team. And also JJ Redick calling out today's NBA players, talking about their they value more what their pregame fit is than the actual game itself. But now we're going to get into some news around the league. We're going to talk about a trade that happened. Jeff Teague is going back to the Atlanta Hawks. You heard it here. You heard it, folks, on this podcast. Jeff Teague is going back to the Atlanta Hawks. He has been traded with Devontae Graham for Allen Crabbe to the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, this is a reunion for Jeff Teague. He was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks as a first-round pick from Wake Forest. Was their starting point guard for many years before being traded to the Timberwolves. So this is obviously a very, very big trade. It's not big in terms of it's going to impact anything, but it's big because Timberwolves have been wanting to let go of Jeff Teague for a while. He has a decent amount of money on the books, plus he's an expiring contract, but they also feel like they needed to upgrade their point guard position, so they traded him to offload some cap space to go get another point guard, which I've heard they're trying to go after D'Angelo Russell from the Warriors to be their new starting point guard. But then obviously the Hawks needed a backup point guard. They had a young point guard in Brandon Goodwin who was a good guy, but you needed a veteran. That's one thing you can maybe say this team lacked outside of Vince Carter. They didn't really have any veteran players, and picking up Jeff Teague, who is familiar with that city, familiar with the team. Before, remember, everybody off that 60-win Hawks team had basically left, and now the one that you could say out of all those players, the fans in Atlanta embraced the most, which was Jeff Teague, is back. A lot of people in Atlanta are happy about this trade because they like Jeff Teague. Nobody ever hated him. Everybody liked him. He was a very well-liked player here. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with him backing up Trae Young, the new star, the new superstar of Atlanta. And it's going to be interesting what happens with that. So that was obviously a trade. Like I said, the Minnesota Timberwolves are trying to go after D'Angelo Russell. So far, there hasn't been any traction, but they clearly want a star guard. They're trying to probably get ready since the 8th seed in the West is very much within grasp. Trying to get D'Angelo, get Karl-Anthony Towns back, with Andrew Wiggins. With those three main players, they think maybe they can make a run at that spot and potentially, be able to, make the playoffs and see what happens in the playoffs. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, since D'Angelo has that big contract, you would think this means he would be the point guard for the next few years in Minnesota because of that contract. Obviously, This might also to help see if you can convince Karl-Anthony Towns to stick around when his contract is up again, giving him that young point guard that maybe he can work with and grow with. And obviously, Andrew Wiggins is Andrew Wiggins. A lot of people question Andrew Wiggins. A lot of people don't think Andrew Wiggins is that good. But, he showed some flashes. He's probably played better this year than he has in previous years. So that's obviously a plus for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So this was the first, I guess, not the first trade, but the first trade maybe with some substance, potentially you could say, in the NBA. So that's that trade news right there. And now also, Zion Williamson has been announced to debut in his first NBA game on the 22nd against the Spurs. This is a great day for Pelicans fans because obviously Zion got hurt, had to get knee surgery to start the season. Obviously, a lot of people had a lot of hype after seeing what happened in the Summer League and the preseason to, basically like, oh, what's going to happen with the Pelicans in Zion? Now that Zion is back, we get to really see as even the Pelicans are also making a push for that 8th spot in the Western Conference. We get to see what they can do and see if they can maybe make a run. Obviously, I think a lot of people, like me, I want to see what happens with Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram is in the running for most improved player, averaging 25 a game. And Zion coming into it, if Brandon Ingram can stay playing the same way as Zion, you have 2 stars now on the Pelicans who can play, put up big buckets, make plays, and potentially get this team winning more games. And then you still got the veteran leadership. I mean, if you look at this team constructed-wise, defensively they have liabilities, but you got Drew Holiday who can score. Lonzo's a good facilitator. Ingram is becoming more of an all-around player. Zion, we think, is going to become an all-around player. Derek Favors is not a bad big man. Josh Hart coming off the bench can give you some buckets. Pelicans don't look like a bad team on paper. They don't. We just don't know, can they put it all together when it gets down to it. So that's definitely going to be what's important to see because obviously, like I said, Pelican fans have been waiting for this all year. But also, during the rehab, Zion Williamson gained like 8 pounds this past week doing a 1-week lifting program. He gained 8 pounds of muscle. So clearly this man Zion packed on weight and muscle quickly, which, I'm pretty sure when they were rehabbing him, they weren't making him do too much rehab in terms of weightlifting because, everybody was talking about Zion's weight, so you don't want to do anything like that. But they're like, okay, now you're about to probably play, so hey, we're going to get you on some weightlifting, get you strong, and then boom. But it's shocking because you don't really hear someone 1 week gaining 8 pounds of muscle. So that shows you Zion's body is definitely a different body type for sure. And it really, you can say his body type was supposed to make him so effective. Now, obviously, some people are concerned with Zion when it comes to his knees because that's a lot of weight on the knees for the type of body type he has. So hopefully that won't hurt him long term with that body type, but we'll have to see. Like I said, we're going to hope for the best because obviously we don't want Zion getting hurt again. We don't want Zion, missing any more games. I mean, I think they said they're not going to play Zion back-to-backs, which is what most people do when you bring back star or key players. Oh, they're not going to play back-to-backs. Because, back-to-backs, obviously, that's coming off, you just played a game, body might be a little tired, coming back from injury, you don't want to put them right back out there 24 hours later, say, okay, you got to get right back out there and play again, another 48-minute game. And again, since this is their best player, they're definitely going to try to protect Zion and not put him out there unnecessarily if they don't need to, which is smart. A lot of people are wondering about the Pelicans training staff because this type of job, you got to really have a top-of-the-line training staff. If you don't, there's a chance that player could get hurt again. You're risking injury, further injury, worse injury. And then it's going to be like, okay, so is it Zion or is it the training staff not giving him the right advice for him to stay healthy and stay on the floor to help the team compete and produce at a high level so the Pelicans can probably try to get to relevancy within the Western Conference, have their superstar for years to come, and win championships potentially if they can get the right team around Zion Williamson. And lastly, Lemelo Ball currently is hurt. right now. He was playing on Australia. Obviously, he's considered a top 5 pick in this year's NBA draft. He's going to call it quits at Australia. He's not going to play anymore in the Australian League. He's going to sit out and rehab and get ready for the draft. Like I said, Lemelo is projected to be a top 3 pick. Some people think he's better than Lonzo, so that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Obviously, you haven't heard much from LeVar, so maybe he's not too much involved in business with him anymore, because obviously some things have happened, some risky dealings with the Big Baller brand. And so, it'll be, I think, since he was never in college and he was just playing in the leagues, first, it could have got him more prepared for the league, because obviously Luka played in different leagues. He was more prepared for the league. LaMelo has played against grown men and other men in different leagues. He could have became more prepared for the league. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that regard. I think, he should prepare for the draft. You're a top 3 pick. Don't risk trying to come back and then getting hurt again, and then your draft stock could be ruined or hurt or damaged. Just go ahead and rehab. You're a top pick, and let the chips fall where they may when the draft comes around in May, I believe, and just see what happens. So I think this is a smart move on Lemelo Ball's point of view here, and I think that it'll definitely be interesting to see where he goes when it's time for him to get drafted in May. So, coming up next, we're going to talk about the latest All-Star votes that just came out, and I'm going to break that down. Plus, we're going to talk about what Markelle Fultz did out against the Lakers with a triple-double, leading the Orlando Magic to an upset victory over the Lakers.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the good old NBA trades. Obviously, Jeff Teague was traded back to the Hawks today, reuniting with his old team. Also, Zion Williamson's debut was announced, and he'll be coming back to the San Antonio Spurs. And also, we have Lemelo Ball quitting the rest of the Australian Basketball League to prepare for the NBA draft and recovering from an injury. So now we're going to get into some All-Star talk here. The third release of All-Star votes came out. I'm going to break it down, tell you who's in there, who's not. In the front court of the Western Conference, LeBron James still leads all voters with 4 million voters. Anthony Davis is number 2 in the front court. So it's pretty safe to say they'll probably both be starting in the All-Star game. Kawhi Leonard is third on just under 3 million votes. Fourth is Paul George. And fifth is Nikola Jokic. In the backcourt of the Western Conference, Luka Doncic leads all players with 4 million votes. James Harden with just below 3 million votes. Damian Lillard's number 3. And then the surprising vote of the year, Alex Caruso has cracked the top 5. He is 4th. Laker fans are coming out to vote for the man they call the demigod. The man they feel like is the key to the LA Lakers run for a championship, Alex Caruso. And then lastly, to end it, even though he hasn't played this entire season, Steph Curry is number 5. On the Eastern Conference side of things, Giannis is leading all voters with 4 million. Siakam is number 2 at 2 million. Embiid was number 2 the last time. Siakam's gotten a lot more votes since then, and now he has dropped Embiid to number 3. Jimmy Butler is 4, and Jason Tatum is 5. In the backcourt, Trae Young leads all guards with 2 million votes. Obviously, Trae Young's been a very debated topic in NBA circles because of the Hawks' success as a record as a team. As the All-Star game is like, are you considering wins? Are you considering just who has played the best? But Trae Young is leading all guards. And there's a very strong possibility he will continue to lead all guards going into the All-Star break and being an All-Star starter. Coming in at number 2 is Kyrie Irving. 3, Kemba Walker. And it'll be interesting. If Kemba Walker did ever jump Kyrie Irving, it's going to be interesting since that's the man who replaced Kyrie Irving in Boston. Number 4, and who I think should definitely get to the All-Star game just because it was in Chicago and because of the season he's having, Derrick Rose. And to round it out is Kyle Lowry. So, if you look at this list, there's been some talk Kyrie Irving might not start, even though he might have the second most votes, because 50% of the votes come from the coaches and media too. And they're saying that since Kyrie missed a lot of games, they may decide to not start him. He'll just be a reserve. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when that happens. And listen, the media and the fellow players making this vote, it's going to be interesting. So maybe you can say Kemba Walker is more of a lock at this point to get that starting spot beside Trae Young in the All-Star game. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But those are your top 5 at each position. I believe that, if you look at the All-Star voting, I like the format because, the fans could have a say. But remember what was the issue with the All-Star voting before is that the fans had all the say, and then basically the coaches vote in the reserves, which is still the case now, but in terms of starters, it won't necessarily mean it. Just because they're a fan favorite because of starters doesn't mean that they're going to get enough votes to actually start. Because that's where the other players and the coaches actually come in there to give their opinions. And then that will determine who starts and who's a reserve. So that's going to be a very interesting ordeal to me. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. In my personal opinion, I think that in the Trae Young debate, I think Trae should be the starting point. Starting guard, because there's not really positions. It's just guards and forwards. So starting guard for the All-Star team, he's just had, the Eastern Conference this year really doesn't have that, as you want to say, many great guards in the backcourt. So, and Trae Young has played, honestly, the best out of all guards in the Eastern Conference, regardless of record. So I just think it'd be a crime if he wasn't in the game, because it was just like, it's almost like saying if James Harden averaged 50, but the Rockets were 500, not 500, but they have the same record the Hawks did, James Harden doesn't deserve to be in the All-Star game. Nobody's having a season like him. He's having probably one of the best statistical seasons ever. And you're going to tell me that he doesn't deserve to get into the All-Star game because of his team record? I feel like you can factor that in terms of maybe there's 2 elite players with 2 great teams, and maybe one's a 1 seed and one's a 2 seed, and you may want to you know what, they have the better seed, so they might get the edge. But I feel like the All-Star game is more about individual statistics and individual success. If he's having a big year individually, he should make the All-Star team if warranted. And like I said, trying to decide based off team success can be slightly involved, but it shouldn't be the main criteria. It should just be maybe a small little thing. It should not be something that is the main decision maker in terms of if a guy gets into the All-Star game or if he doesn't get into the All-Star game, in my personal opinion. It's kind of that debate you had with Russell Westbrook a couple of years ago. The Thunder, Western Conference 48-33 was not bad, but they were a 7 or 6 seed. He had that triple-double. The first year he averaged a triple-double. And people were wondering, well, James Harden has the better team and has had his historical had a great season. Westbrook has the worst team, but has had a more historical season than Harden. So which one do you value more? I think that's kind of the same debate here. And it was an upset last night as the Orlando Magic beat the LA Lakers. And the reason why, a man that has been off the grid but has now returned to prominence, Markelle Fultz. Yes, sir. Markelle Fultz basically just schooled up the Lakers last night by getting a triple dub and making great plays down the stretch to be able to get the clutch victory against the LA Lakers. It's great to see Markelle Fultz having success. Obviously a lot of people, have really thought Markelle Fultz was never going to rebound from what happened with his surgeries. And just, would he ever be able to be what you maybe thought he would be as a number 1 overall draft pick? I think you could never hate Markelle because, he's done so well. It's his first career triple-double. He's done everything he's needed to do to be successful. And all you can do is continue to support him through all his endeavors, all the struggles that he may have potentially went through. All you can do is hope for the best. And, he got help last night. Obviously, it helps getting 21, 11, and 10. Shot efficiently for the most part from the field, just slightly below 50%, but, he still played well. And he was just able to get clutch baskets down the stretch to get them to win. He was able to come up with clutch plays to keep the lead on their side and help them be able to win. Aaron Gordon made some big plays down the stretch. Markelle Fultz hit a couple of big shots down the stretch. And, it's just things happen, So congratulations to him. Congratulations to being successful. Congratulations to, him just, hopefully this jump starts his career in the forward direction. He may not be the superstar you would think a number 1 overall draft pick would be, but if he can be a very solid player who remains in the league for years to come, I would feel like that's a very successful career for Markelle Fultz, especially just seeing how his career started at first. But coming up next, we're going to go into a list that Bleacher Report dropped about one thing that every championship team's biggest hurdle they'll have to overcome and break it down with my thoughts and opinions. Coming right here on the GMMC Basketball Podcast. You want to stay tuned for this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the breakdown, the latest All-Star votes for his third returns, and the breakdown. We also talked about Markelle Fultz takes down the Lakers with a triple-double last night, and really just making a comeback in the league and showing everybody that has been talking smack about him for the last couple of years that he is better than what all of y'all thought he was going to end up being. So congrats to him. But now we're going to go into a list by Bleacher Report that talks about the one thing that every championship team's biggest obstacle could be and overcome. And I'm going to go here and break down each obstacle for each championship team they have listed here. So we're going to be doing that, and I'll give you my opinion. So the first team they mentioned on this list is the Boston Celtics. They mentioned about what's keeping them back, and their biggest obstacle is a superstar big. Now, if you think about the Boston Celtics, the last few years they've had Al Horford, and then he went to the 76ers this offseason. So from a big man perspective, they don't really have any efficient big men. The best big man they have is Ernest Canner, and a lot of people feel like Ernest Canner is a top bench big man at most. So the fact that he's your starting big man, going against big men like Giannis and Embiid in your own conference is kind of a mismatch for the Boston Celtics on the post. I think that the Boston Celtics is something that they can try to add a more skilled big, a better defensive big, because Kanter is a little bit of a liability defensively. So they can try to add more of a skilled big to help out with that situation, that issue. Now, they are third in defensive efficiency and sixth in share of the opponent's attempts that come at the rim. And so they've done pretty decent. But, listen. The Celtics need a big, because when it gets to the playoffs and you have to play Embiid or you have to play Giannis, you're going to need that big. Because Giannis right now is probably going to get you about 30 points a game against Boston, because there's really nobody in the post that can guard him. And then Ben Simmons can post you up too. So if the 76ers want to post to Ben Simmons, they could do that too, get easy buckets under the rim, and be able to beat the 76ers that way also. So obviously the Celtics need to definitely overcome that, and you also get more scoring from their big men. So it's going to definitely be interesting what happens with Boston. Now, they could try to make some trades potentially, but it's going to be hard because they don't really have anything that they can give up. Especially if you're trying to touch the core five of Boston. They're not going to give up any of those players, so it's going to be hard to improve it. So they're going to have to maybe try to go for some names maybe worth snipping around for, like Taj Gibson maybe, Cody Zeller. And if Orlando's still open to trading Mo Bamba, see what you can get for Mo Bamba. So you're going to have to see about that, but that's Boston's biggest obstacles in terms of their biggest obstacle in terms of trying to get a championship. The Denver Nuggets are next on this list, and their biggest issue is their 3-and-D wings. It's usually that one position that every top championship team needs when it comes to making that final piece to make it to the finals. Everybody always talks about how, the Lakers need a wing, or Portland needs a wing, or Clippers need another wing. Like, everybody always talks about a wing. That's why guys like Darren Collison and Andre Iguodala are such in demand, because you need that 3-and-D guy. 3-and-D guys are very, very valuable in today's NBA. Denver, usually you would think, they need a 3-and-D wing, but you don't know if that's good and bad for the Denver Nuggets. It just depends on how you view it. Now, the thing about it, though, is that they do have some first-round picks. They do have some assets stored up, the Denver Nuggets do. So they could always trade and get a guy, maybe get rid of Mason Plumlee or something like that. But we'll have to see. It just depends. We're going to have to see if potentially maybe they can go after a Jay Crowder or Robert Covington. Maybe a Marcus Morris Sr. It just really depends. There's a lot of options on the market. It's not like they have to stick to a particular option. It's not like they have to stick to a particular player. They have options on the market, but they have to try to improve it. And they have to see what happens. But, also Denver's in a position where they have a lot of talent. They are second I think they're second in the Western Conference right now. So it's not like they're just like, they're in need of it because they don't have enough. But in terms of the playoffs, maybe just adding that last 3-and-D guy could really get Denver over the top. For the next team on this list, the Houston Rockets, a defensive wing. I would feel like that's the truth, because you got to think about their defensive wings. They don't really have any great defensive wings. Aaron Gordon can play defense, is not the best. We know James Harden picks and chooses the days he wants to play defense. Russell can play defense, but, that's one guy. So what about the shooting guard position? It's really that shooting guard wing, small forward wing that you need. Now, Patrick Tucker, he can play defense. He's obviously one of the most audacious defenders we have in the game. James Harden, like I said, can pick and choose defense. So I think Houston, if they can get in a defensive wing, that's why they picked up a guy like Shumpert last year. This year, we answered, are they going to try to pick up another defensive wing? Remember, they were trying to also get on the Andre Iguodala sweepstakes. So they obviously see the value in Andre Iguodala as Iguodala is still a good defender at this point in his career and can hit the three ball from time to time and make some plays when needed and available. So, listen. Houston's a team where a lot of people feel like they're not as good as their record says. Some people feel like they are as good as their record says. Some teams feel like they can compete with the top teams in the Western Conference. Some feel like they're not really that good. It's just James Harden's having a great performance. No matter how you view Houston, I think they should know what they need to do to be able to, take that next step and be a better team in the long term for the future. So it's going to be very, very interesting what happens from that perspective. Houston is a team that's just interesting all around. They have a lot of guards on their team, but just none of them, in terms of what they need from a defensive standpoint, isn't really the best. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can maybe try to get a defensive wing and help out. So, that's Houston. The Los Angeles Clippers, one last thing they say they need is a playmaking shooter. Now, it's interesting that you say that because you have Lou Williams, who's a playmaking guard. Kawhi Leonard is a playmaking forward. Paul George is a playmaking wing. So they have playmaking wings, but at the point guard position, behind Patrick Beverley, that is what you could say is their weakest point. They don't really have a backup point who can come in there and playmake. They could use maybe another wing guy in general. It just really depends. So, outside of the four core scorers, they have to really find offense. And just getting another guy who can make some plays can really help. There's some guys out there. Obviously, Marcus Morris Sr. I think would be a pretty good fit for this. He doesn't have to be a shooter. But he's also showed more of a complete game when he's been in New York. Obviously, having the time to shine. So the potential is definitely there for Marcus Morris Sr. to maybe end up on the Clippers, but I highly doubt they're going to do that. That's why, again, they're aiming for Andre Iguodala, Darren Collison. The Lakers, they need another wing, maybe another wing, maybe another point guard. It just depends. Also, bringing down LeBron's minutes, as that's what Bleacher Report says, that he was bringing LeBron James down in minutes. Because you don't want to wear him out. He's your best player. You don't want to wear him out. You don't want to make him too tired or injury prone or any type of banger knees or anything like that going into the playoffs. The Lakers obviously are trying to compete for a championship with Anthony Davis, so they got to make sure they're good. But they also a guard could also help out with the LA Lakers and improve them going forward. The Milwaukee Bucks are in need of a playmaking shooter also. Bucks, when you saw the moves that were made, you could tell they lost a lot of shooting. And they need more shooting still. So they definitely do try to get maybe a Robin Covington, a Bertans, a Burke, a Sarge. They need to get some shooting in there because shooting is going to get them to the point they want to go. And that's been the issue. That's been the issue that has been all the time. It's just they have to get more shooting if they want to be able to really explode and also help spread the floor for Giannis to get into the paint. The 76ers are also in the same position. They need shooting. Because Ben Simmons is not a shooter, and that's honestly a weakness. And that's also one of the things that the 76ers need shooting, spread the floor for Embiid. Even though Embiid can shoot the three, you'd rather have him in the paint because he's more dominant when he's in the paint. And so it's going to be very important that the 76ers get shooting for those reasons. These are all important reasons. Obviously, as you can tell from this list, shooting is extremely important for all these teams if they want to make a deep run into the playoffs and solidify their championship team. But coming up next, we're going to go into some college basketball talk about the early upsets in college basketball and also the must-see games coming up this weekend. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about a future report list about championship teams and the biggest things they need to add and overcome for them to complete their championship team and make a run to the NBA Finals this year in the playoffs. Now we're going to get into some college basketball talk, and there was a lot of upsets early between Tuesday and Wednesday. A lot of upsets happened in college basketball. We're going to break them down right here. Plus, I'm going to give you some must-see matchups coming into the weekend also. So the first upset we're going to start with Tuesday was Wisconsin beating number 17 Maryland 56-54. This is a big win for Wisconsin. This is another big win for them too. This is obviously a big loss for Maryland. And I know, again, something about this year in college basketball, there is a lot of upsets happening this year. A lot. A lot of teams are being upset on the road. It's just if you're a ranked team going to a home stadium, you're struggling. It's been shown. That's why there's so much switches. And this is obviously a big win for Wisconsin in the Big Ten Conference, beating a team like Maryland because just helps their tournament resume. Again, these are important for these teams because they may not have the record in the status of these other teams to make the tournament, but beating these teams are going to be key quality wins for if they're on the bubble when tournament time comes around. Another upset that happened this week on Tuesday, Clemson defeating number 3 Duke 79-72. Tigers just come out there, they boat rushed Duke. They won the first half by 7 points and they never looked back. Amir Sims for Clemson had a career high 25 points against him and his 6th career 20-point game. And Clemson's been hot. Clemson has been a hot team coming into the game. They have just continued that. I mean, they really upset at Coach K. Obviously, again, this is another ranked team going on the road to a stadium and losing. Just the theme of college basketball this year has been that, and it just continued with Clemson. Obviously, this is a big one for Clemson. Clemson hasn't had the greatest year, too. They're 9-7 right now, so record-wise, it's not really the best. But again, if they can keep more of these wins, they might be able to push forward and potentially make a late run at a bubble spot in the tournament. Now we got to switch to talk about Wednesday's game, which is obviously all but most of the upsets happened. Beginning with one of the last 2 ranked teams in the country going down in Auburn. Number 4 Auburn loses to Alabama 83-64. Another ranked team goes on the road, goes to a hostile environment, and loses. Alabama also was 9-7 on the year and beat them obviously in the first half. The Crimson Tide just came out there and played well. Obviously, this is low-key a rivalry game because obviously that Alabama rivalry. And obviously a lot of Alabama fans were excited about this win, beating the number 4 ranked team in the nation. And this is just big for Alabama. Again, if they can make some more wins like this, might be able to make a little push to the tournament, beating a great team like Auburn. Another upset that happened was number 60 Wichita State moving to Temple, 65-53. Now, another common theme outside of the Wisconsin game is a lot of these games have been more than 8 plus 8 points. So it's not only they're losing in close 1-possession, 2-possession games at the end of the game, they're losing by 3, 4, 5, 6 possessions. So these teams that are going on the road and going to these venues are getting outplayed by these teams significantly. And I don't know if it's just if they're not ready to play. I don't know if they're underestimating the teams that they're going against, but clearly that's an issue. You've seen the underplayedness, obviously, with this, so they're going to have to do better if you want to, obviously, make it and have a better seed in the tournament, because all these teams, the biggest thing for them is these are bad losses. It's a bad loss now. Now, if they continue to play well, the teams that they lose to, and move up, then they won't be bad losses later. But right now, you may look at this loss for Wichita State and say, oh, this is a bad loss losing to a Temple Owls team. But they were able to pick up the victory. South Carolina, one of the best games in the SEC so far, wins on a bank shot at the buzzer against the Kentucky Wildcats, 81-78. Obviously, that was big. The South Carolina Gamecocks had to make a comeback in the second half, and they came back and they were able to win at the buzzer. And it's a big win for South Carolina. Like I said, South Carolina 9-7. So right now on the resume, it looks like a bad loss for Kentucky. If South Carolina falters like this, it will remain a bad loss because they're only 2 games over 500. If they go on a losing streak and go below 500, the committee's going to look at that. Oh, Kentucky lost to under 500 team. That may bring Kentucky down in the seeding, give them a 6 or 7 seeds instead of maybe a top 4 seed down the stretch, potentially maybe. But that's why obviously that would be like a big loss for them, losing a game like this to South Carolina. And remember, this isn't South Carolina's first time beating a ranked team. They beat Virginia earlier this year. So South Carolina has upset some teams this year. They've beaten some of the best. Don't let the record fool you. When they come against those tough teams, South Carolina can play with the best of them. Next game also on the list that also upsets of that day is number 5 Butler going down to number 18 Seton Hall, 78-70. Obviously, Butler came out in the first half, looked very impressive, was up by 10. Second half gets outscored by 18 total in the entire second half. Obviously, you see what happens. Another loss. This is one of the few games, though, where it's not the team that's ranked higher who went on the road. They were at home and let Seton Hall beat them at Butler. So this is going to be a very impressive win for Seton Hall. Plus, Seton Hall is a ranked team, so this will only help improve their ranking and potentially move them up in seeding in the potential NCAA tournament bid that they get. Beating a team like Butler at Butler, that's obviously a very impressive win for Seton Hall. And, it's just, again, a great 2 days of basketball for college basketball. Upsets are what make college basketball fun. They are what makes college basketball exciting to watch. If everybody who's supposed to win wins, college basketball isn't exciting. But upsets make it exciting. That's why you watch college basketball. So now we're going to talk about some must-see games coming up this weekend, which you should pay attention to, which you should tune into. We're going to start with a Friday game, Michigan and Iowa. Obviously, Iowa has one of the best scorers in the nation in Garza, going against the number 19 Michigan team. Michigan has, ever since that hot start, beating all those ranked teams in that tournament, invitational, the last 10 games, they are 5-5. So they're going against the Iowa team who's 7-3 in their last 10 games. And right now, they've already played once this season, and Michigan won the first game, but they're going to Iowa this time around. And I know Garza and those guys are going to be ready to play and try to get an upset against a very up-and-down Michigan team right now. Another game's coming up that's going to be big this weekend. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on Ohio State. Ohio State right now is 5-5 in their last 10. They're going against a Penn State team who has the exact same record. Now, they've played already once this year. Ohio State won the first game, but again, this is at Penn State. Obviously, Ohio State's trying to bounce back. They're trying to get back on a roll after having that slump of losing 3 to 4 games straight. They won their last game, so they were able to get back on track, and they're going to try to ride that momentum into this game and continue to be successful moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Ohio State in that run, in that long-term run that they're trying to make, to hopefully make a tournament run in the long term. Another big game, obviously, that's coming up this weekend. We have Kentucky versus Arkansas. Arkansas silently is one of the best SEC teams that are under the radar. They may have not played the hardest schedule in the world, but they're 14-2. They're 8-2 in their last 2. So they've played some pretty good basketball. They're going against a Kentucky team, obviously, coming off that loss. They have 4 losses on here. You got to watch out for this game. This is a potential upset game. Arkansas might remember this because the theme is there. Kentucky going on the road. Big Ten team. Arkansas might be able to get an upset there. Do not be surprised if an upset comes out of this game because that's the theme of the entire college basketball season so far. And then obviously the biggest game on Saturday, Duke versus Louisville, the number 3 Duke, which obviously by next week they won't be number 3 regardless of what happens in this game, going against number 11 Louisville. Ever since losing to Kentucky, Louisville has read off 3 straight victories. So they're coming into this game feeling themselves. Obviously Duke's trying to bounce back from a loss. This is obviously going to be a big game for both teams. Louisville is 7-3 in their last game. Duke is 9-1. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens in this game, as this is the big game for the day. And obviously it's both important for both teams. Louisville to just try to establish some type of dominance in the ACC, and the Duke to just again bounce back from a loss like that and just remain on track moving forward into the future, and so on and so forth. Coming up next, I'm gonna give y'all the top players I would want to start my team with at each position. Coming up right here on the podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about some college basketball, all the upsets that have happened early this week in college basketball, and also some of the big matchups coming later this weekend in college basketball. Now we're going to do a segment where I'm going to talk about the players that I want to start a team with, young players that I want to start a team with at each position: point, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. I'm going to start with the point guard position. And I don't know, y'all might think I'm a homer for this. But I'm going to go with Ice Trey, Trey Way, Trey TL, Trey Young. I feel like Trey Young he has that superstar box office potential. He is someone that if I was starting a franchise and I needed this, and they said, find you a starting franchise young point guard, I want Trey Young. He'll get people in the seats, and he'll produce on the court. We really can't understand the impact of Trey Young because of what the Hawks season has been so far this year. But you can see that this man definitely can put up big games. Honestly, at the beginning of the season, he was very clutch when the Hawks needed buckets late. And he's a very clutch player. I feel like Ice Trey is one of the most clutch players in the NBA when given the opportunity to show it. I think that he presents everything you would want in a point guard. Obviously, his liabilities, he's a smaller guard, so defensively, you may have some issues, but that's why it's going to be important to put a good defensive team around him. Listen, you can win with a small point guard. Golden State's done it for the past 4 years. You put enough talent around him, you can win with him. It's not impossible. So I definitely would go with Trey Young as my top point guard if I was going to start a team and they said, get me a star young point guard for the future. Obviously, Luka Doncic, if the trade wasn't there, I'd probably go with, because obviously Luka Doncic is a bigger guard and just as great. But you have to understand something. Luka is a great player, and now he's getting the recognition he deserves. But at first, when they first drafted Luka, you have to think about everything. Luka wouldn't have put fans in the seats at first. You just would have had to wait and see. He's one of those guys that you have to watch for a while and then be like, okay, now I want to go see him. Where Trey had that box office appeal from day one. Now, from the shooting guard position, I would want to go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Obviously, he was traded in the Oklahoma City trade for Paul George to the Clippers, and I think that this man has all the potential to be one of the best players in the league at that position. You know, he could play 2 and 3, but I'm going to say he's 2 in this position. Because if it was 3, then, I would have had more options. There's obviously a lot of good guards in the league, like Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell, who could have been very, very much in this spot, just like anybody else. But I just felt like, he was the guy I'd rather have, in my personal opinion, at this point. So I think that if you got him or someone else, it'd be a great selection, and it'd be a great pick. He can play both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. He can score, rebound, even can get you some assists. Remember, he was the first 20, and 10 triple-double ever in the league. So he's obviously done a lot of great things for what he's done for Oklahoma City. He's one of the reasons why Oklahoma City is competing right now for a playoff spot and competing in a tough Western Conference with Chris Paul because of how his play has been. And all you can do is just give him the credit and praise that he deserves for what he's done for the franchise up to this point. It was an absolute steal. They were able to get such a young, great piece like him in the trade for Russell Westbrook. And, I just like to say, all I do is wish him the best moving forward, and hope for him to just continue his success. Just moving into the top spot. A small forward. There's a couple of guys I could go with here. Giannis is technically a small forward, but people classify him as a power forward too, or a point guard, or wherever you want to do it. But if you're talking about natural position, small forward, I'm actually going to go with Jason Tatum. Especially the way Tatum is played. If I'm getting Tatum from his rookie year and this year, I don't see why I wouldn't want to play him as my top 3. He's big, he can shoot the ball, has a very nice stroke, plays both ends of the floor, and can get to the rim. He's a very well put together player. He doesn't do anything elite. That's one thing about him that you might want to say as a criticism of him. Oh, he does nothing elite. He's not elite at anything, but he does everything very well. He's one of those players who could be a top 20 player in the game because he just does everything well for years to come. He can give you about 18 a game, 6 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists. That's a pretty good line. If needed, he could probably hit 20 a game if needed. He's obviously had more of an offensive role this year with the Boston Celtics, and he's showing that he's been able to handle that role. And, I just think he has all the potential in the world to be just a top guy. I don't think he could be the best player on your team. But like I said, since there's so much fluidity with the small forward position in terms of playing the 2 or playing the 4, in terms of naturally pure small forwards, I would go with Jason Tatum. I feel like that he would definitely be a very solid. Like, he may not end up being the best player when it comes to that championship team that if you form it around him, but I do feel like that he will definitely be a very important part. He could potentially be your second best. Very good, but he'd definitely be a great third best option on your team if you had Jason Tatum, because you've seen what he can do when he's given the opportunity. At power forward, if I had a young power forward, now it's funny. I've looked at Giannis's position, and some consider him a point, some consider him a small, and some consider a power forward. So the reason why I'm not going to mention Giannis at all in this is just because his position is so all over the place. It's just like, I'm just not going to select him. Because, of course, Giannis would be the obvious pick if I wanted to say a power forward. But I'm not going to go with Giannis. That's my power forward for the future. You could go with Kristaps Porzingis, but, his injuries and stuff. So if you're talking about power forward, you're going to have to go with the next best young power forward. And that's Jaren Jackson Jr. He can space the floor, block shots, defend the perimeter, score off the dribble. He has star potential. And listen, Jackson wasn't productive as soon as he started off, but he has all the potential to be an all-around player. He's kind of like a Jason Tatum in this situation. Has the potential to be an all-around player, but could be the second best player on your championship team. You might have to get his top one later, but he definitely can be a very important part of that team. He can do so many things, well on the team. He's a very versatile big man, and he's a guy that I don't see why you wouldn't want him on your team. Some people call him an NBA nerd's dream, which is funny to me, but some people call him that because of the talent that he possesses and what he can do for anybody who wants him. He's a great talent and a great pickup for anybody who needs a star, a small forward, young small forward for the incoming future. And now, if you're talking about the center position, it's pretty obvious at this point. The Joker, Nikola Jokic, he's one of the best passing big men in today's generation. One thing about Joker that some people have a criticism about is that he's not aggressive enough all the time. Because Joker has the ability to get you 25, 30 a game if he wanted to, because he's a 7-footer. He's big. He's very nimble. And, obviously since he grew up in Europe, he has an advanced feel for the game. Obviously, that's why he's able to shoot the ball and have the fundamentals that he has. Because he was taught all those things at a young age developing when he got to the league. That's why he's been so successful. So, I think the Joker would definitely be one of the best picks, I think, for, this position in terms of a center. He could do the 3-point line. He could get to the rim. He's great in picking rolls off the jump shot. And just
one thing about him is obviously if I said he's going to be my starting young center for the future, I tell him, hey, we need you to be productive offensively every night. We do not need 8-9-point nights out of you because you're too good for that. I understand that you can pass and get you 10 assists if you wanted to. You could get us some rebounds, but you got to give us some scoring because you are one of our better players. And since you are one of our better players, we need you to play like one of our better players. So if he does that, I think he could be one of the more, I don't want to say unstoppable, one of the best centers to play this game when it's all said and done. Not from a domination standpoint, but from a skill perspective. One of the most skillful centers to ever play this game. But that's enough for me today. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, download, and leave a review. It really helps us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.